The goblet squat is a squat variation that's a very basic fundamental movement pattern, which is a squat. We're going to continue to see many variations of a goblet squat throughout our time together. So it doesn't matter if we're taking a pause rep or a partial rep. The basic rules apply to all variations. So first of all, always understanding that our setup is going to make or break our squat. So our feet are always going to be hip distance apart, using our arms as that guide. And remember, if our feet are too close, arms are going to be on the outside. If our feet are too wide, arms are going to be on the inside. If our feet are too close, when we take our squat, our heels are going to raise, which our goal is to try to keep our heels on the ground, so that can't happen. And if our feet are too wide, we're just simply not going to be able to get full range of motion and therefore the most out of that squat. So feet are hip distance apart. Our toes are going to be turned at that 30 to 45 degree angle. We want to make sure that our knees are tracking along our toe line. So what that means is as we take our squat, we're allowing our knees to open up wide and we are tracking along that toe line. Our knees are not more narrow. Our knees are not more far apart. They are tracking along the toe line. So if you have your toes turned out and you are taking that squat and you're trying to keep your knees super close together and squatting, see how that's going to put a little bit too much. As we are squatting down, our goal is going to be to make sure that our knees are the same height as our glutes. If you are able to get your glutes super deep and also come out of that squat, that's wonderful. But a lot of people already have a hard time getting our glutes as low as our knee height. So that's why it's the goal. If you can do more, great. But if you can't, this is the goal. Now, occasionally, we will play around with a variation with our heels elevated. Our ankle mobility will affect our ability to get as deep into our squat as possible. So if we have really tight ankles, we won't be able to squat down deep. And the deeper the squat, the more muscle recruitment and the more challenge we're placing on our body. Because when we leave range of motion on the table, we are not using our muscles to their true potential. And so a way to compensate for a lack of ankle mobility is going to be to raise your heels. Now, a goblet squat is inherently a little bit more of a squat that targets our quads, partially because our weight is in front of us rather than in the back like a back squat. And partially due to the fact that our weight is in front, as we take that squat down, we are almost essentially leaning forward, which is going to push those knees past our toes a bit more. Now remember, it's perfectly normal for our knees to come past our toes as long as we're not feeling any pain or discomfort. The next time that there's a set of stairs in front of you, as you're walking up the stairs, are you able to take those steps up and or down without your knees coming past your toes? The answer is 100% going to be yes, and so therefore, remembering we're training for life, it's perfectly normal and natural for knees to come past our toes in life, so why would we not train in those same positions with external load to get us stronger for everyday life? Like most exercises, the stronger and more engaged your core, the stronger and more engaged your center of gravity. And your center of gravity is responsible for how much energy and how much power you're able to exert. And so we want to make sure that as we're taking our squat, our lower back is not hyperflexing. And instead, we are tucking that pelvis forward, almost like there's a little string attached to your pubic bone coming all the way up to the ceiling. Now from here, we're just bracing our core, okay? Tense those abs. Pretend like there's a string from your belly button to your spine, and that string is pulling from belly button to spine. We're tensing, we're braced, we're strong. And that's gonna help prevent that lower back from rounding as we take our squat up and down. As we're coming up out of our squat, there is no need to thrust our hips forward at the top. Not only is that creating way too much pressure on your lumbar spine to move in a direction that's not natural or normal for it, pushing our hips forward at the top is not necessarily more glutes, because if we think about it, nothing is happening with our glutes at the top of our squat. We're just standing, okay? So they're not contracting, they're not extending, nothing is going on. Really what's happening with our glutes is at the bottom of a squat. Our glutes are stretched out, they're in their lengthened position, and so it would make sense if you want more glute engagement at the bottom of your goblet squat to maybe pause, right? But at the top of a goblet squat, this is not necessarily doing anything for not only the squat movement pattern, but also your glutes. So don't worry about coming down and up and thrusting. Instead, we're just coming down and up and standing. Now, when we're holding on to our weights in a goblet squat position, you might use 1 dumbbell or you might use 2 dumbbells, which I'll show you in a minute. A goblet squat position with your weights looks a little something like this. The weight is in front of you, your elbows are almost helping absorb that external load, and you're not trying to hold it about here, aka using your arms, especially your smaller muscle groups in your arms, and therefore burning out your arms before your legs, which are bigger than your arms, are really lifting to its true potential. So we're not holding the weight down here using our arms. Our weight is chest height, elbows are helping absorb some of that weight, and that weight is resting on the palms of our hands. Now let's say you're using 2 dumbbells. Similarly, it's still going to be chest height, it's still resting on the palms of our hands, and our elbows are still holding the brunt of that weight. Having a dumbbell in each hand is forcing your arms to work, and again, your arms are not going to be able to carry the amount of weight that is required in order to fatigue your legs, and also your arms are going to burn out before your legs actually give out. We want to keep the weight as close to us as possible. So as we're squatting down, the weight doesn't need to come forward. We want to keep that weight close to our chest. With the weight in front, it's really easy to let that weight drag us down. And look at how far away my weight is from my person and my center of gravity. I'm putting more pressure on my lumbar spine because of how far away this weight is from my core. So we're not trying to bend forward in a squat. We're trying to lead with our glutes and have our glutes initiate the movement, allowing us to just come down and up. Notice the weight is also tracking along my ankle line, my leg line. And that is what's making it safe to carry that external load. That's also what's making it more possible for me to lift as heavy as possible with more control. Okay, let's put it all together. Feet are hip distance apart. Toes are pointed at that 30 to 45 degree angle. Core is braced, pelvis is tucked, weight is at our chest line, on our palms, elbows taking the brunt of the weight, and it's close to our person, okay? Glutes are initiating the movement, and we're coming down and we're coming up. Similarly, if we're using 2 weights, weights are still in front, feet are hip distance, toes are turned out, and we're tucking that pelvis forward. Weights are close to us. We're not letting the weight drag us forward and down. Our weight is tracking along that leg line. And again, goal is glutes are as high as your knees, thighs are parallel to the ground. Perfectly normal and natural to let those knees come past those toes if it's comfortable for you. And that's Goblet Squats 101.